Hey everyone, it's your favorite AP Government and Politics teacher, Miss P. This week we're going to be covering Introducing Government in America. It's the first chapter in your book, so let's get started. So the goal of this chapter is to introduce you all to government in America, and really the whole point of this book and this course is to emphasize the point that those who participate in the political process are more likely to benefit from government programs and policies. So we really want to get you guys, all young people, excited about participating in government and politics in our country. In this episode, we're going to cover a number of things. We're going to look at the key functions of government. We're going to look at the definition of politics. We're going to look at how citizens can impact policy and vice versa, the key principles of democracies and the theories about how it works today, as well as the challenges that democracy faces today. And finally, we're going to look at the central arguments of the debate in America over how big the government should really be. So the first skill I want you to be able to do is I want you to be able to identify the key functions of government and why they matter. So what is government? Government is the Congress, the President, the courts, and the federal administrative agencies. Your book defines government as the institutions through which public policies are made for a society. Some big questions that this chapter covers are how should we govern and what should government do? Well, some of the things that governments should do are to maintain a national defense system to protect citizens, provide public goods and services, and those are called collective goods, preserve order and establish laws in the country, socialize the young, which basically means that it's the government's job to instill in children the knowledge and pride in the nation and its political system and its values. And finally, the last function of the government is to collect taxes and maintain the economy. The second skill you'll have to be able to do is to define politics in the context of a democratic government. Politics is simply the process of determining the leaders that we select and the policies that they pursue. People can get involved in politics in many ways, and all of this is called political participation. Voting is an example of this. Now, the third skill you're going to be able to demonstrate is the ability to assess how citizens can have an impact on public policy and how policies can impact people. The government responds to the priorities of the people through the policy-making system that's written in your chapter. The chapter talks about institutions like political parties and interest groups and how they influence the policymakers in government. Every decision that the government makes, every law that it passes, every budget that it establishes, any ruling that it hands down is called public policy. There are different kinds of public policies such as regulations and court decisions, congressional statutes, and presidential actions that fall all under this category. Next, we're going to identify the key principles of democracy and outline theories regarding how it works in practice and the challenges that democracy faces today. Democracy is a system of selecting policymakers and of organizing government so that the policy reflects the citizens' preferences. And most Americans would probably quote Lincoln and say that democracy is government by the people, of the people, and for the people. Now keep in mind that our democracy involves choosing representatives or the people that govern. The relationship that exists between elected leaders and its citizens is one of representation, which means that the desires of the people should be replicated in government through the choices of elected officials. And then those choices should reflect a practice of majority rule, meaning that policies should reflect the will of over half of the voters, but keeping in mind that they cannot infringe upon minority rights. Now we're going to look at three theories of American democracy. Pluralism is the theory that emphasizes that the policy-making process is very open to the participation of all different kinds of groups with shared interests, like the NRA, the National Organization for Women, and the American Council on Education, and that no single group has dominance. Elitism, on the other hand, contends that an upper-class elite, or the 1%, holds the power and makes policy regardless of the formal governmental organization because they have the ability to finance election campaigns, thus controlling key institutions. And lastly, hyperpluralism argues that groups are so strong that the government ends up giving in to them and becomes weakened. Now, democracy is not easy, and there are a number of challenges, including increased complexity of issues, limited participation in government by the people, escalating campaign costs, and very diverse political interests. The key factor that holds American democracy together is its political culture, or the set of values that are shared within American society. Some of these values include liberty, individualism, a laissez-faire or free market economy, populism, like Lincoln said, government of the people, by the people, for the people. And last but not least, egalitarianism is a value that we hold dearly, like you might be familiar with this quote. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal, which is found in our Declaration of Independence. The final skill you'll have to be able to do is to outline the central arguments of the debate in America over the proper scope of government. In 2009, President Obama said the following:
"It is true that we cannot depend on government alone to create jobs or long-term growth. But at this particular moment, only government can provide the short-term boost necessary to lift us from a recession this deep and severe. Only government can break the cycle that are crippling our economy."
And that sparked some pretty heavy debate on how big or how small the government is supposed to function in the 21st century. And that's it. That's Chapter 1. I hope you'll listen again next time when we cover Chapter 2, the Constitution.